I built something out of nothing. That's what I used to say when people asked about the business. My father left me a rusted van, 2 worn-out saws, and a name people barely remembered. And somehow, over 35 years, I turned it into one of the most respected construction firms in the county. Martinez and Son, but there was no son, not at first. Just me. Waking up at 4, pouring concrete in freezing rain, learning how to make payroll when the checks hadn't cleared yet. The kind of life that gives you bad knees and a 1,000-yard stare. But when Ava was born, everything changed. Suddenly, I had a reason to come home before dark, to sit cross-legged on the floor and pretend I wasn't sore, to read her bedtime stories while trying not to fall asleep myself. Her mother died when she was 7. Car accident. One of those calls that rips the air right out of your lungs. After that, it was just the 2 of us. I never remarried. Couldn't. Not when every part of me was already given to work in her. I put her in the best schools. Drove across state lines for math competitions. Paid for dance lessons I couldn't afford. She had this way of looking at the world like it owed her something, and all I wanted was to make sure she got it. Ava was always sharp. Too sharp, maybe. She could talk herself out of trouble with teachers, talk herself into the front of any line. By high school, she had opinions about how I ran things. Told me the website was outdated, the branding was old school. I let her redesign it. Let her intern in the summers, though she hated the dust and the noise. I'm not meant for hard hats, she used to say, laughing, spinning around in my oversized office chair. She went to business school in New York. I paid every cent. No loans, no debt. That was the one promise I made to myself after her mother died. She'd never struggle the way we did. When she graduated and moved back home, she had this fire in her eyes. She wanted to open a wellness studio, yoga, nutrition coaching, boutique tea blends. It's more than a business, she said. It's a movement. She'd found a space downtown, sleek and overpriced, and she just needed one thing, a co-signer for the loan. I listened. I nodded. I even ran the numbers myself. The projected costs, the break-even point, the marketing budget. It was a beautiful dream, but it was built on wishful thinking. Wellness trends come and go. Leases last 5 years. And when they default, the debt doesn't vanish. It comes for the co-signer. I told her no. Not out of cruelty. Out of caution. Out of experience. I explained why, slowly and gently. You're not ready, I said. Give it a year. Save more. Build a client base. Start small. She stared at me like I had just spat in her tea. The silence after that was thick, like smoke after a fire. You'd co-sign for anyone else, she snapped. I wouldn't co-sign for God himself, I said. It's not about you. It's about risk. Her eyes went cold, the kind of cold you don't come back from. She stood up from the table, her napkin falling to the floor. You know what? You're dead to me. And then she left. Just like that. No storming. No screaming. Just those words hanging in the room like poison. I heard her car start in the driveway, the squeal of tires as she backed out too fast. I just sat there, at the head of a long, empty table, my fork halfway to my mouth, dead to her. I poured myself a glass of bourbon I hadn't touched in months, stared at the photo on the mantle, Ava at age 10, sitting on my shoulders, both of us covered in sawdust, grinning like fools. I used to believe that love was a kind of currency, that if you gave enough of it, it came back. But that night, I realized something different. Love, like business, has risk. And sometimes, you end up paying the price alone. She didn't call the next day, or the day after. I kept expecting a text, maybe some flippant apology like she used to give after teenage tantrums. But it never came. What I got instead was silence, cold, deliberate, punishing silence. The kind that doesn't just fill a room, but expands inside you, echoing in your chest until every other sound feels small. The worst part wasn't her absence. It was how final her words had sounded. You're dead to me. Not angry. Not even emotional. Just done. I replayed it in my head so many times it started to rot the edges of my memories with her, memories I used to lean on when life felt too heavy. Her first steps across the sawdust-streaked floor of the warehouse. Her squeals of joy when I surprised her with a puppy. Her college graduation when she ran into my arms, tears in her eyes, whispering, "We did it, Dad." I tried to stay busy. That's what I'd always done. Buried myself in invoices, site plans, and contractor meetings. But it didn't work like it used to. Everything I touched reminded me of her. The custom cabinets she helped design for a client last spring. The social media account she set up. Even the lavender candle in the office she insisted would make us seem more approachable. It still sat on the corner of my desk, half-burnt. That Saturday, we had a family dinner planned. One of those rare evenings when cousins and siblings and in-laws came together over roasted chicken and loud stories. I thought maybe Ava would show up. Maybe she'd let her pride crack. Maybe I could fix it. She arrived 20 minutes late. Not unusual, but her entrance was. She walked in with her shoulders squared, chin high, wearing a sleek black coat I didn't recognize and a silence that warned the room to stay small. We made eye contact. Brief. Barely. She gave a nod to her uncle, hugged her aunt, then slid into the seat furthest from mine. I opened my mouth, but closed it again when I saw her glance at her phone mid-conversation, as if the evening bored her. Midway through dinner, someone made the mistake of asking how her new business venture was going. She set her fork down slowly. "It's on hold," she said flatly. Apparently not everyone believes in supporting family anymore. The table tensed. Her cousin, bless his heart, tried to laugh it off. Come on. Every entrepreneur hits a bump. You'll get there." That's when she looked up, directly at me, voice cold and sharp. Hard to get there when your own father doesn't think you're worth a signature. The air vanished from the room. My brother shifted in his seat. My sister-in-law reached for the wine bottle like it was a life raft. I tried to stay calm, measured. "This isn't the time, Ava." "No," she said, standing. "You're right. The time was 2 weeks ago when I needed your help. But instead, you made it clear your trust has limits." I stood more out of instinct than decision. I was protecting you from a decision that could bury you in debt before you even start. "You're not ready." She laughed short, bitter. "No, I'm just not you. And because of that, nothing I want will ever be good enough." "That's not true," I said, but it sounded hollow even to me. She stepped around the table slowly, heels clicking on the hardwood like gunshots. She stopped just short of me, voice low but seething. "You gave your life to that business. I gave you. Everything I did was to make you proud. But now, you're dead to me." She left before I could reply. Just like last time. Only this time, she took the air with her. Nobody spoke for a long time. My nephew scraped his fork against his plate. Someone's phone buzzed. I didn't finish dinner. I walked out to the garage, sat in my truck, and stared at the steering wheel for an hour. The house behind me glowed with voices I couldn't re-enter. I felt like a ghost, still here, still breathing, but no longer seen. Dead to her. The phrase kept coming back like a splinter you can't dig out. I thought about everything I'd done for her. The nights I held her when nightmares stole her sleep. The day I shut down the job site to be at her school science fair. The years I worked late and woke up early so her world could stay soft. And now? One word, dead, erased it all. That was the moment something shifted. Not anger. Not yet. But a detachment. Like a cord had been cut. Something told me not to call this time. Not to chase. Not to apologize, just to keep the peace. If she wanted me dead, maybe it was time I showed her what dead really looked like. I didn't tell anyone what I was thinking. Not at first. It started quiet. Just a flicker of thought that turned into a steady burn. She said I was dead to her, and I realized I'd been living like I owed her something just for existing. But what Ava never understood, what she refused to understand, was that everything I built wasn't for some grand inheritance. It was never about passing down a business like a crown. It was about survival, dignity, getting to the end of your life and knowing you built something that mattered. So I went back to my ledgers. The original ones, yellowed and handwritten, stuffed in a fireproof box beneath my desk. I flipped through years of margins and net profits, notes scribbled in the margins like diary entries. There was a time when I couldn't afford to fix the AC in the office, when I had to lay off my best guy just to keep the lights on. And Ava? She never saw that version of the business. By the time she came around, we had health insurance, paid holidays, company Christmas parties. She grew up on the results, not the reality. I started making phone calls. Quiet ones. My attorney, Harold, who owed me more favors than I could count. My accountant, Rosa, who ran a tight ship and never sugar-coated numbers. I met with a broker downtown, in a coffee shop Ava probably would have called rustic chic. I didn't mention her name. I didn't say why. I just asked what the market looked like for a company like mine, and how fast I could get out. The answer, faster than I thought. There were buyers out there, young firms hungry to scoop up reputable businesses with solid books. They didn't care that I still kept paper files or refused to use QuickBooks. All they saw was profit potential. Contracts, equipment, the real estate I owned outright. I was sitting on millions, and suddenly the idea of walking away didn't make me feel scared. It made me feel free. You sure about this? Harold asked when I gave him the go-ahead. I paused. Thought about Ava's face at dinner, the way she sliced through my presents like it was disposable. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. I didn't stop there. I met with a foundation that supported trade schools, real ones, not fancy tech incubators or MBA factories. Programs that trained electricians, plumbers, masons, kids who were told college was the only way forward and believed it until rent came knocking. Then I met with a group that helped single fathers. Another that ran mobile clinics for construction injuries in rural counties. I took meetings in back offices and break rooms, shaking hands with people who still had dirt under their nails. And when they asked how much I wanted to give, I said, all of it. Rosa nearly choked when I told her. You're donating the entire sale? She asked, eyebrows nearly at her hairline. Every cent, I said. Let the business go to someone hungry. Let the money go to someone who needs it. She didn't argue. She knew me too well. I started writing letters, one to my staff, another to our clients. But I kept the most personal one for Ava. I didn't know if I'd send it. It wasn't cruel, just honest. I told her I loved her, that I always had, that my refusal to co-sign wasn't a punishment, it was a boundary. And that boundaries, once violated, came with consequences. I told her she taught me something, too, that when someone says you're dead to them, maybe it's time to stop living for their approval. I burned the letter, not out of spite, just clarity. She didn't want my words. She wanted my name on a dotted line. My signature was her measure of love, and I couldn't keep trying to prove myself in a language I didn't speak anymore. By the time the deal closed, it barely felt real. I signed the final documents at the same desk where I once cried over missed deadlines and payroll delays. I left the keys on top of the paperwork and walked out without looking back. It didn't make me feel triumphant. It made me feel done. Dead, as requested. But she'd find out soon enough. Not through me. Not in some tearful phone call or awkward brunch. No, I made sure of that. The broker had arranged for a feature in the local business journal. Legacy Builder Sells Company donates entire fortune to working-class initiatives. It would hit stands next week. I pictured her reading it, her coffee growing cold, her fingers tightening around the muck. The silence stretching before the fury. And maybe, just maybe, she'd understand what it meant to say someone was dead to you and have them believe you. She found out the way I hoped she would, through someone else's words. The paper hit newsstands on a Thursday morning. Bright cover, big headline. They'd run a photo of me standing in front of the old office, arms crossed, sun catching the silver in my beard. The quote beneath it read, "If legacy means anything, it's what you leave behind when no one's clapping." I didn't buy a copy. Didn't need to. I'd lived every word of that article before the journalist ever typed it up. But from the moment it ran, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Old friends, competitors, former clients, my high school shop teacher. Everyone had something to say, some variation of, "I had no idea you were doing this," and "Your daughter must be proud." I didn't respond to the last one, because by then, I'd already seen her name flash across my screen twice. Missed calls. No voicemails. Then a text, short and sharp. "Is this a joke?" I didn't answer. An hour later, the knock came, 3 quick pounds on the front door like a warning, not a greeting. I opened it, and there she stood. Ava, cheeks flushed, eyes wild, that same black coat draped over her shoulders like armor. She didn't wait for an invitation. Just barreled past me into the living room, phone clutched in her hand like a smoking gun. "You sold the company?" I closed the door, leaned against it. "Yes." "And gave everything away?" Her voice cracked on the last word. "All of it? To strangers?" "They're not strangers," I said. "They're people who need it. People who'll use it. What about me? She shouted, stepping toward me. You gave my inheritance to what? Plumbers. I bit the inside of my cheek. Hard. It was never yours, Ava. That business wasn't a trust fund. It was my life. You said I was dead to you. So I let it go. Her breath caught. She stumbled back a step, as if slapped. That's what this is? A punishment? No, I said quietly. It's a conclusion. She turned in a slow circle, I sweeping the house like it was suddenly foreign. Her jaw clenched. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you know how hard I've worked? How much I needed that loan? I do, I said. And I know how hard I worked. Every year. Every sacrifice. And you reduced all of it to a signature. When I didn't give it, you cut me out. You cut me out, she fired back. You always have. You never took me seriously. Never thought I could do anything on my own. You asked me to not let you do it on your own, I said. You asked me to take the fall if it failed. She stared at me then. Really stared. Something behind her eyes flickered. Rage, grief, disbelief. You should have told me, she whispered. You should have let me fight for it. I shook my head slowly. You didn't want to fight. You wanted me to fold. She looked around again, this time like she was searching for something that would ground her, some proof that this was still her home, that she still belonged here. But she didn't find it. You ruined everything, she said, almost to herself. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to ruin. The business was gone. The money was gone. And the version of me who would have bent over backward to earn her love, that man was gone too. She walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the knob. You'll regret this, she said, without turning around. Maybe, I said, but not as much as I've regretted trying to buy peace. The door closed with a softness that felt more final than a slam. I stood there for a long time after, in the stillness, letting the silence settle around me like fresh snow. My chest ached. Not with sadness, but with the strange relief of something unburdened. It was done. The business. The fight. The need to explain myself to someone who'd already written my obituary. She said I was dead. Now, finally, I was. She didn't stay away. 3 days later, she was back. Less fire, more calculation. This time, she didn't knock. Just let herself in with the key I hadn't yet had the heart to collect. She walked in like a lawyer preparing to appeal a verdict. All crisp edges and quiet fury. I was in the kitchen, rinsing a mug, the smell of black coffee still hanging in the air. She stood in the doorway, arms folded. I talked to Aunt Rosa, she said. She told me everything. I dried the mug slowly, deliberately. I figured she might. She said you've been planning this for weeks. That you didn't just donate the money. You set up foundations, charitable trusts, endowments. I nodded. That's right. She stepped forward. You did all of that just to cut me out. I looked at her hard then. Not like a daughter, not like a stranger, but like someone I couldn't quite place anymore. No, I did it because I was finally ready to stop begging for your approval. I did it because you made it clear what I meant to you. You meant everything to me, she said, softer now. That's why it hurt so much when you said no. It wasn't the no that hurt you, I said. It was the boundary. She went quiet. Her face crumbled for a moment. Then she pulled it back together like a curtain. I needed that loan, she whispered. I needed you to believe in me. I do believe in you, Ava. But belief doesn't mean co-signing debt I think will bury you. You didn't even trust me enough to let me try. That's not true, I said. I trusted you to try. I just didn't offer to carry the weight if it failed. That's not the same thing. She turned away, arms trembling. You're supposed to be my father. I'm your father, I said. But I'm not your financier. And I'm not your fallback plan. She stood there, staring out the window at the fading daylight. Her voice came low, fragile. I thought you'd always be there. That no matter how bad things got, you'd still be my safety net. I nodded slowly. That's the problem. I stopped being your father and started being your foundation. You didn't want me. You wanted what I built. And when I said no, you killed the rest of it. She finally turned to face me again. Her eyes red, but not with tears, just exhaustion. So that's it. You're really just done. I'm done chasing a version of you that can't see me as anything but a vault, I said. I'll always love you. But I won't trade pieces of myself to keep the peace. She took a step closer, but there was still that invisible wall between us. You didn't even give me a chance to prove you wrong. You didn't give me a chance to be right, I said. We stood there in the quiet for what felt like years. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the house key, placed it on the counter without a word. I don't know what happens next, she said, voice barely audible. I looked at the key. My fingers itched to slide it back to her, to undo the moment. But I didn't. Neither do I said. But I know this. This needed to happen. She left again. This time slower. No theatrics. No final threats. Just footsteps on old wood and the sound of a daughter trying to figure out what remains when the inheritance disappears and all that's left is the man. And I just stood there, hands on the counter, staring at the key. It was funny. All these years I thought it was the building, the business, the money that kept this family together. Turns out it was the illusion of safety. And once I stopped offering it unconditionally, everything else came crashing down. The house was quiet now. Not the heavy, haunted kind of quiet, just the kind that settles when a storm is past. I didn't fill the silence with music or television. I let it breathe. Let it walk the halls like a long-forgotten guest, finally welcomed back. Every morning, I made coffee the old way, stovetop, strong, unhurried. I took my time with it. Sat on the porch and watched the light creep across the yard. I didn't check my phone first thing. Didn't worry about contractor delays or liability clauses or whether the forklift license had been renewed. I was, for the first time in nearly 40 years, untethered. The foundations I'd set up started sending newsletters. One had enrolled 40 students in its first trade certification cohort. Kids whose resumes had been ignored by colleges but lit up when handed a welding torch. Another clinic had expanded to cover rural counties I'd only ever driven through. It felt strange, knowing I'd done something that rippled outward, unseen, without my name on the marquee. Ava hadn't reached out since the key. I thought about her every day, not with bitterness, but with a kind of ache that had softened at the edges. I didn't stalk her social media or ask around. If she was building something, failing something, learning something, that was her path now. Not mine to monitor. Not mine to fix. I did catch a glimpse of her once, though. Downtown. She didn't see me. She was walking into a shared workspace, carrying a laptop and a stack of branded water bottles. Her stride was tight, her face pulled into that familiar look of purpose. I watched her from across the street, heart tight, hands still. She looked older. Not in a bad way. Just sharper around the edges. More worn in. She didn't look back. And I didn't call out. That night, I pulled out the last thing I'd been holding on to, a framed photo of the original Martinez and Son sign. The first one I ever hung above the warehouse door, hand-painted in midnight blue. I'd kept it all these years. It had sat in my office like a badge, a reminder of where I started. Now, I looked at it and felt nothing. Not shame. Not nostalgia. Just completion. I built it. I ran it. I walked away. I fed the photo to the fire, watched it curl in on itself, the colors bubbling and darkening until it was just ash. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt clean. I slept better after that. Ate slower. Read more. I joined a local volunteer crew that taught teens how to use tools, hammers, saws, drills. Real skills. We built picnic benches for parks, repaired porches for elderly folks on fixed incomes. No one asked what I used to do. I didn't offer. And when I lay in bed at night, I didn't replay the fights, the disappointment, the what-ifs. I didn't hold imaginary conversations with Ava where she apologized, or I did. I didn't rehearse the kind of reconciliation you only see in movies. I just breathed, let go, and lived. Some people might call that lonely. But to me, it was freedom. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever had to walk away to find your peace, subscribe for more raw, real family stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Your story matters, too. See you soon in the next one.